So it's really important that we know when our food is safe to eat and when it's not, especially when it comes to home food preservation. And when it comes to fermenting, sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell. But oftentimes people think that their ferment has gone bad, and it really is savable and salvageable. So if you ever have a ferment and you see the top of it starts to get a skim and almost like little tiny bubbles beneath the skim, that is cam yeast. And when cam yeast gets really pronounced or you really let it go, it almost will get like little wrinkles in it all the way across it. But cam yeast is actually not necessarily harmful, meaning you can consume something with cam yeast. It's not going to harm you. It doesn't make it unsafe. It can alter the flavor. So if you do see some cam yeast beginning to develop on your ferment, like I have a small amount right here, then it is something that you want to come in, take a clean spoon or utensil and see if you can get that off. So you see there, it's like a film and it's kind of wrinkly. This is just cam yeast. So ideally, this is a jar, if it's on, that you're going to want to consume relatively fast, because it usually, once you've got cam yeast in a jar, it will begin to grow back. And over time, it can affect the flavor and affect it usually in a negative way. People don't really enjoy the way that the flavor is. So you can choose to throw it out, but if it's just a small amount like this that's on a jar, I just go ahead and skim off as much as I can from the top. And then we just go ahead and make sure that we eat the food in this jar the fastest. The reason a lot of people will confuse cam yeast and think that their ferment needs to be thrown out is because they're worried that it's mold. And when you've got a ferment, mold, of course, is going to be white, but it is fuzzy. And it usually has different round patches. It's not smoothly all the way across the surface until, of course, it's been allowed to really grow for a long time. So mold will be fuzzy, and usually it's in little dots all over the top of the surface or the sides of the jar. It's not something that's smooth. Now, as far as cam yeast, like how do you avoid getting cam yeast? Because ideally we don't want to have cam yeast in our ferments. One is making sure that you are using at least a 2% salt brine ratio when it comes to your ferments, that you're using really clean vessels, that you're completely cleaning and sterilizing them, especially if you do have cam yeast present, like you've had it in some ferments. You're gonna wanna make sure that you wipe down and sanitize your surfaces really well. And then keeping it in a cooler temperature if possible while you're doing your initial fermentation. Now I know in the summertime our houses are really usually quite warm, but ideally 68 degrees Fahrenheit or cooler for vegetable ferments can definitely help keep that cam yeast at bay. And using an airlock can help. So instead of just using a metal lid and band, if you can use a fermenting airlock system lid, that will definitely help keep the cam yeast at bay. But this I had initially a airlock system on, and I didn't have any cam yeast developed on it until I put it in the fridge. And this is a ferment that I did about, 2 months ago. And I just pulled it out and noticed that there was a little bit of cam yeast. So it could have been when someone got some of this out that they weren't using a clean fork, or there was some cross-contamination happening. Putting it in the fridge will definitely slow down the development of the cam yeast and the growth, but it won't halt it altogether. So skim it off, consume it quickly, or if you really, really aren't sure if it's cam yeast or mold, if you do think it's mold, it's always your best bet to throw it out. When it comes to home food preservation, in doubt, you do want to throw it out. But knowing what it is and not tossing ferments unnecessarily is a really good thing. And if you want to learn more about fermenting and preserving food, including all of my absolute favorite recipes, which includes this fermented radish and onion recipe, make sure you go and snag and pre-order a copy of my new book, Everything Worth Preserving, which goes over the 9 different ways that you can safely preserve food at home, with a ton of charts, some fun pre-order bonuses, and all of our favorite preserving recipes here on the Homestead.